We went to one facility, and there was a lady there that she was nonverbal. She didn't talk. And I brought Sydney in, and she said a word. She said, doggy. And then she started petting Sydney, and she started singing. She started singing, Jesus Loves Me.
Oh, my goodness.
And then she started singing, He's got the whole world in his hands. And people were just amazed.
Welcome to Aging in Style with Lori Williams, the podcast all about finding the silver lining no matter what life throws your way. I'm Lori Williams, an award-winning senior living expert, author, educator, and caregiver to my husband, Mark. Join me as I share insights, tips, and personal stories to help you navigate the world of senior housing, discover ways to pay for care, advocate for your loved ones, and most importantly, learn how to thrive, not just survive, as you age. Hi, welcome to Aging in Style. Today, we are talking about a group called Canines for Christ Therapy Dog Ministry. And I met these ladies at a senior living community back in, I think it was October. It was a Halloween event. And I was so impressed by what they were doing. And of course, I love dogs. I have my golden retriever who's everything to me. And I loved what they were doing. And I asked if they might want to come on the podcast and share about this organization. And they said yes. So here we are. So I want to introduce Debbie Piland and Kelly Ray. And let's get started.
Okay.
Welcome.
All right. It's good to be here.
Good. I'm so glad y'all were able to come. Let's start off about the mission. What is the mission of this organization?
Well, our mission is to have the love of Christ shine through us and our canines as His disciples by providing a ministry of presence that actively engages with people who need the love, hope, and compassion that only God's message can provide. Our logo is loving God, loving people, loving dogs.
That's beautiful. And this is an international organization, correct?
That's right. It started, the headquarters used to be in Florida, but currently the headquarters are in Pleasanton, Texas. And it is an international ministry, and then we have our own chapter here in the Denton County, Argyle area.
Okay. And how was it started? Who started the organization and why? Do you know what their reason was? Was a loved one or something that spurred them on?
Larry founded this in Lutz, Florida, and it was his personal mission and ministry that he ended up promoting to others in the local area. And then his dog Gracie was so adept at it that it drew the attention of other people in his orbit, so to speak. And as a result of that, it started promulgating chapters across Florida and then spread from there. For a period of time in this past year, I was the local chapter program director. And at that time, we had over 30 chapters here in the U.S., and we had some that were interested in having chapters internationally, but yet not yet quite meeting the criteria for us to launch chapters.
Okay.
And the original group started in 2007 in Florida.
Great. And they're still going strong in Florida?
They are. There are a lot of chapters in Florida.
Wonderful. So are there chapters like in every state, or do you know?
There are not chapters in every state. In order to have a chapter, we have to have 3 distinct households with members with dogs that can serve. You can be a part of the organization without having a dog. There are roles that you can fill in support of the organization's mission without having a dog who's serving. And to the extent that people have been serving with their dogs and dogs have passed away and they haven't gotten additional dogs through the qualification process. We have some members that are still no dog members serving in that capacity.
And we have quite a few members that do not belong to a chapter. They may just be an individual that lives in a small town in East Texas, and they're very active, but they're not officially a member of a chapter. So there are a lot of people like that do this as individuals without being part of a chapter.
And I mentioned senior living, but this is not specific to senior living. You go to prisons, you go to, all kinds of
there's basically no program or institution that we won't support as long as they're understanding that we have a mission that is Christ-centric. Mm-hmm. We do have specific programs like the crisis response programs. We have a Reading Buddies program. We've got Junior Handler program. We do have a separate chaplains program. So there are kind of a cross matrix of types of places that we go to and types of programs that we offer. The primary basis, apart from a specific program, is simply to be there as what we call a ministry of presence.
Mm-hmm. For example, we go to cancer centers, grief centers, children's hospitals, nursing homes, senior care facilities, veterans hospitals, hospice facilities, special needs. We go to schools, churches, home visits, prisons, 9/11 call centers, crisis response locations. Mm-hmm. So we go to lots
health
of
fairs.
Yes,
health fairs,
and health fairs and safe homes for women. So we do a lot of things like that.
Well, I may have a health fair for you. So tell me, how did you get started in this? What drew you to be a part of this mission?
Well, I learned about this organization through one of my best friends, and she is a chaplain in the San Antonio area. And her dog is certified, and she works with the organization there. And the San Antonio chapter is a very large chapter. And so she was telling me about all the things that she was doing with her dog. And we had a border collie that passed away. And she said, when you get a new dog, you need to join this organization. So when we started looking for another dog, we were rescuing a dog. We looked for one that would have the temperament to be a good therapy dog. So I was interested in the organization. But then when Kelly, who is a retired lawyer, and when she retired about 3 years ago, she was also very interested, and we attend the same church. And so she was really the driving force. It's let's do this, let's get this started, let's get a chapter going. Mm-hmm. So we started with just the two of us and our two dogs. And that now we have like over 14 teams in our local area.
So I retired, and my initial objective was that I was going to do like Samaritan's Purse disaster response. At the time, I was focused on rebuilds. And about 6 months after I retired and after I had done a couple of trips for that, I saw an article that was Canines for Christ having supported Samaritan's Purse at the time. And I was really missing our dog who had passed away 4 years prior. And we decided we're not going to get another dog until we were on the road less with work. So 6 months in, I was drawn to looking at Pet Finder to find a dog. And we were a water family, so there weren't too many that had photos of dogs that were drawn to the water, but there was a particular dog that we were drawn to, and so we adopted him as a 5-month-old puppy. Mm-hmm. His name is Luca, and I named him that with the meaning of his name in mind. Mm-hmm. Luca means bringer of light.
Aww.
And so then we began the training process, and at the time we were just dealing with regular training, kind of talking back and forth with Debbie about Canines for Christ. Luca's temperament was, even as a puppy, was very calm and very soothing. And so when we got to the spring of the following year, spring of 22, we went ahead and we started making plans for joining the national organization and creating our own chapter.
What kind of dog is Luca?
Luca is a Great Pyrenees Shepherd mix. He's 144 pounds now as a 4-year-old. And then we've since brought another dog who's a 2-year-old all-American dog, because he's 15 different breeds, into the program as well. So we're a household with 2 therapy dogs, both with Canines for Christ. And we have other members in our chapter that have multiple therapy dogs in their household.
How many, so in your chapter in Argyle, how many people? Is that 14 people you said? Or
We've got 14 ambassadors, which are the human components. And we have 16 canine ambassadors.
Oh, wow.
For example, Debbie and her husband, they're both individual count, but they have one dog. By contrast, we have another woman who's in our chapter, and she's got 3 therapy dogs. So it does take a bit to get a dog qualified to be a therapy dog with Canines for Christ. And they don't have to have gotten the therapy dog title from the AKC at the time that they start serving. In fact, the way you get titled with the AKC is that you start serving with an organization to provide evidence that you're doing therapy dog work. And then it's based upon the number of visits. After you submit your application with the fact that they've completed a canine good citizenship test, then you submit your application and you start doing visits. And then based upon the number of visits, they gain different titles. 10 visits, they're a novice. 50, they're a therapy dog. And many of our dogs are still at that level. At 100 visits, like Luca has made advanced. He's 8 visits away from making the next level, which is at 200 visits, you get excellent. We've got some dogs in our group that have reached the 400 visit level, which makes them distinguished. I don't think we have anybody in our chapter, but we do have in the national organization that have over 600 visits, which is the highest level, called Supreme Therapy Dog.
Supreme. I love it. Can any kind of dog be a therapy dog? Any breed?
Yes, any breed. We have some dogs in our local group that are 3.5 pounds, and then we have some that are 144 pounds. And so any dog can be a therapy dog as long as they pass the AKC Canine Good Citizen, so they can be a Canines for Christ therapy dog if they do pass that. There's a new Canines for Christ temperament test form too, so there's another test they have to pass just to make sure they have the temperament to be a therapy dog. And then they have to be at least 1 year old and owned by the primary handler for at least 6 months. Their vaccine records have to be current, and you have to agree to the statement of belief of Canines for Christ because it is a Christian organization. And then you fill out your application and join, and you send in a headshot because you have little business cards for your dogs.
Okay, the business cards are the cutest thing I've ever seen, and I think my Sadie needs to be a therapy dog with her own business cards. So, like, for example, I have a 3-year-old golden retriever who is a self-taught therapy dog for my husband. She just trained herself, apparently. But what kind of training? Because, like, at this point, like, she's wonderful with people. She's not a jumper or anything. Occasionally she will. But, I wouldn't like open the front door and let her run out. So what is that the kind of, do you need a certain kind of training for that first?
So there are 10 elements to the Canine Good Citizenship test. Much of the training programs you can get involved with where the end goal of that training program is to pass that Canine Good Citizenship test. That's things like they have to be okay with someone coming and touching their ears or touching their paws so that they're not going to shy away from or be intimidated by a stranger. So you have to make sure that they're willing to stay. You put them in a stay, that they're willing to do that and wait for you while you're off away from them.
Okay.
Across the 10 different things, the organization, Canines for Christ, has actually put together a training program to help orient the human ambassadors as to the parallels between things that are asked for in this Canine Good Citizenship test and human qualities, and how we can do the same kinds of things. Like, showing compassion. The dog has a test that they will interact with an external person that they don't particularly know and not be aggressive toward them or fearful of them. But the organization has done a lot to try to get the ambassadors prepared for doing visits in a way that is honoring to the vision and mission of the organization itself, honoring to God, and honoring to the individuals that we're interacting.
So, like, say my dog, for example, like I said, she hasn't had formal training. She can sit, stay, do those kinds of things. But I don't know if she would stay if I said, stay here with this person, just stay. So do you have like trainers you recommend that people work with?
There are, for example, my dog Luca, he went all the way through advanced training with one of the pet stores. But even at that level, even though they trained for the same kinds of things, there wasn't enough additional dogs to serve as distractions during his advanced level training.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so we ended up taking him to an additional training session that was through an organization in Denton, where they trained specifically for the Canine Good Citizenship exam, but also made sure that their class size for that was sufficient to where there were lots of distractions going on, so that the dog really is looking to you for your cues, for their cues.
For example, your dog could go to that obedience class in Denton, and it would be a 6-week class once a week. And at the end of that class, they would teach the skills required for the AKC Canine Good Citizen, and then at the end of that class, there would be a test, and your dog could. You don't have to take the test, but if you want to get your dog certified, you could take the AKC Canine Good Citizen test. Okay. And probably your dog already does quite a few of those things.
Yes, she does.
There might be just a few things that you might have to work on. Like we recently had 3 small dogs certified in our local group, and they were so small that people were used to just carrying them around. So the skills of being able to sit and down and stay, they really kind of had to work on those. But we did a little bit of training, and then they tested, and they all 3 passed. So with a lot of prayer, they passed.
That's so funny. So in any area where there's a chapter, I'm sure they have like obedience training or whatever, someone that they could refer people to.
The chapter leaders try to seek out things that are supportive of the canine needs. There's about 8 different roles within each chapter. One of those is canine relations, and that's where you have somebody in the role of identifying where people can get their dogs tested, where they can go to find quality training to take them through, and point them back to, we've got videos on the national page that give you tips and tricks, and we have a national level canine relations kind of person, the canine relations program director. That may not be the official title, but
something like that. Yeah.
Essentially, she is an advisor. So if you find that you run into an issue with a dog, then you can reach out to her, and she can give you advice and guidance on how to help the dogs overcome that issue.
Okay. Well, I would love to talk about some stories about dogs. And I know, Debbie, you were telling a story earlier, and this is not a senior-related one, but of dogs who went to Uvalde. So do you want to tell that story?
Right. My friend that helped me get involved in Canines for Christ, she's in the local chapter in San Antonio, and that's a very large chapter. And when they had the shooting in Uvalde, Canines for Christ was on the ground there the next day after the shooting, and they had representatives there every day until all the funerals had been completed. And there was one dog that was there. There was a little boy who had been in one of the rooms where he had seen a lot of his friends be killed, and he had just shut down. He wouldn't talk. He wouldn't share anything about what happened. And they brought in one of the dogs from Canines for Christ, And he just went over and he laid his head down on the dog, and he started telling the dog what happened.
Oh.
And they just said that's the first time he's been able to talk about this. That's one example.
That's
and then
beautiful.
we see that with senior care facilities. We'll bring a dog in, and someone will say, that looks just like my Misty, and they'll start crying and they'll want to hug the dog. And we have sweet stories. I remember one lady she was just whispering, and I couldn't understand what she was saying, and finally I leaned over and she said, I wish you could come every day. And so there's just a lot of sweet stories.
Dogs are so healing.
There are a lot of men in senior care facilities that had hunting dogs, and they love the bigger dogs, and they like to talk about hunting stories, and so it just reminds them of their dogs, and they love to share about that.
And it's funny, in memory care facilities, you'll go in, and there's this, at one of the memory care facilities in Denton, this gentleman, every time we come, my dad had hunting dogs and coon dogs and night dogs. And it's as if it is fresh for
Every
him.
time for him.
Every
Yes.
time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always, every time, get to hear about his dad's dogs. And Luca, as a Great Pyrenees, is recognizable to several ladies who have had that kind of dog in their past. We recently had one woman who initially didn't want to interact with the dogs, and she apparently had been in a mood and really wasn't wanting to engage at all. And then a little bit into it, she let the dog come by her. Then she didn't want to let go of the dog, and she recounted how she had been really sad and really lonely, and how being able to interact with that dog had transformed her day. And she said, at the end of the session, she said, this is the best thing that's happened to me since I've been here.
Aww.
And she was fairly new to the facility, but that was literally within a 30-minute window, because at that facility we spend half our time in memory care and half our time in assisted living. And within a 30-minute window, she made that complete transformation.
I bet people just light up when you walk in with the dogs.
They do. And the dogs have their favorites too. Luca is so low key that the demeanor in assisted living or memory care doesn't make him excited. But the staff level, when he is kind of the staffed dog. One activity director at a senior assisted living facility said, you can tell it's a good event when the staff makes sure that they come.
Yeah.
So Luca, he likes big guys. He's a big guy, so he likes big guys, and he likes the staff. Earl, our smaller dog, 2 years old, top 5 of his breeds are all high energy. He brings the temperament and the engagement level up for the seniors.
Yeah.
So he's more the senior interactive dog, and Luca's the staff interactive dog.
Well, you're covering it all.
My dog, Sydney, she's a herding dog. She's Australian Shepherd and Border Collie. So they kind of sense who's in control. So we go to one senior care facility where she just loves the activities director. And as soon as we get there, she wants to see the activities director. And then she just follows the activities director around. And the director sometimes takes us to 4 different houses. And so it's like, okay, wherever Claire goes, Sydney goes. It's like, okay, we're leaving. I've got to follow Claire. And she just wants to walk right beside the activities director.
And herd everyone up, right?
Yeah. But she knows that person's in charge. So I think she's drawn to her because, she's in charge here. So I have to follow her.
She's the alpha.
Yeah.
And
sweet.
we do interact differently in different facilities. Several of the facilities will bring residents to a centralized location. We had one dog that tended to wear her. Her ambassador said, we're going to need to stop going to these locations and go to locations where I can take her around to the individuals.
Because it was just too
It was
overwhelming
too
to
overwhelming
her.
for that particular dog. Earl, he's little party animal, so he's happy with all the people to him. But by the same token, up in Pilot Point, I have to take Earl because we go room to room, and Luca, that would be overwhelming for Luca.
Yeah.
Partly because every room there is a shared room, and there's not a lot of space, and he's knows big. He's a big dog, and in fact, he thinks he's bigger than what the space is quite often. So there have been times that he would not go into some place because he thought he couldn't get in and out.
My dog has the opposite problem. She's 87 pounds and she thinks she's about 10 and wants to be in our lap.
Yeah, I think she's a lap dog.
She's a little confused.
We went to one facility and there was a lady there that she was nonverbal. She didn't talk. And I brought Sydney in, and she said a word. She said, "Doggy, doggy," and then she started petting Sydney, and she started singing. She started singing, "Jesus loves me."
Oh my goodness!
And then she started singing, "He's got the whole world in his hands." And people were just amazed. They said, "She doesn't talk."
Yeah. That gives me chills. I love that. That's beautiful. Music and animals; those are things that we find really get. Into people who do have like the severe dementia, and they can make that connection still. So, do you ever have people who are afraid of dogs?
Yes, we have some staff members at senior care facilities that are leery of dogs, or some that are afraid. We have some residents that you ask them first, are you interested in interacting with the dog? And we've had some that have said no. The dogs tend to win those people over time. And there's a really sweet story with a unwed mothers program where they have additional children. And so they have a weekly get-together that used to be held at our church. And they have grandpa and grandma type figures who take care of the kids that they have while the mothers are doing training and interacting with one another. And there was a little girl who was absolutely not wanting to interact with the dogs. But her brother, we had the dog lay down on the floor, so not as intimidating. And this was Luca, so he's big. He's much bigger than the kid. So Luca laid down, and the other kids were sitting around and petting, and her brother convinced her to come over, and she sat down and petted. They were taking pictures, and like everybody was so amazed because she was afraid of dogs, and yet she interacted with them. And then after that point in time, one of the kids, every time we would come to visit, he wanted Luca's leash. I mean, this kid, he's not even the height of this table. He's 3 years old. He wanted Luca's leash. And he spent the time that we were there leading Luca around.
Oh,
so
it's going to be a little dog trainer.
And occasionally in a senior care facility, you'll find someone that they just don't want the dog near them, and we try to be sensitive to that. Occasionally you'll find someone that's actually allergic to dogs, and they'll say, "No, I'm allergic," and so we just try to stay away from that person.
Something I noticed with Sadie, my dog, when my husband was in rehab due to his strokes for 7 months, and so they would let us bring her, but we had to be outside with her, and so they were having a party one day, and they had everyone outdoor, like on this pavilion. And they said, "You can bring her over." And I was a little nervous because there were, everyone's in wheelchairs, which is, for her, she's used to seeing wheelchairs. It doesn't faze her at all. But I thought, gosh, we really need, my son was with me. And I'm like, we really have to keep her away from people who don't want to see her. But she instinctively knew who wanted to visit with her and who didn't. So she didn't go up to everyone. And I've never seen her be so calm. And she was only a little over a year at that time. And there was one gentleman who was in a wheelchair, and he was not able to speak. He was very severely affected from his stroke, and he just was kind of curled in. And he motioned her over with a finger, and she went over and she just laid her little face, on her big face, on his hand, and he was saying something to her. I couldn't understand what he was saying. I just thought, I was amazed by that. So do you find that dogs just kind of like instinctively know who
Some
should go?
of them do.
Right.
We have a little dog named Cooper in our group. Our chaplain for our local organization has that dog, and he just kind of knows. He can walk into a room and it's like he kind of knows who needs him that day, and will just go to that person, and he seems to be very intuitive and goes up, and if they want him to, he'll get up in their lap and he actually kind of gives them a little hug and just kind of hugs them, and he's a sweet dog, but he's the best little therapy dog, but he just seems to kind of know who needs him that day.
Yeah. I think we're gonna have to make Sadie a therapy dog.
And there are some of the things that the smaller dogs more readily do is they learn tricks, and you can entertain the residents
dancing
with
and stuff.
different tricks, twirling and being sneaky. Or what did you learn from the firemen? How to stop, drop, and roll.
Oh, how cute!
We have one that recognizes the names of colors and numbers, and you can. It's the same little dog that I mentioned that's so
The
intuitive.
other one will too.
Yeah, and
Ellie will do it
but
too.
the lady who owns the dog will put down a treat, and she'll say, "Leave it." She said, "No, you can have it on number 7." And so she'll go 2, 5, 8, 13, 15, 20, 7. And as soon as she says 7, the dog gets the treat.
That's amazing.
And he will do it with colors too.
Oh my gosh!
I've started teaching Earl how to do that. So he can do the be sneaky. He can. Luca's so big, we have Luca lay down, and the other dogs jump back and forth.
Oh, how cute!
So Earl does that, but it's cuter when you see the smaller dogs jumping. And we've had one that will jump and stay on Luca's back. And,
Cute. So it's entertaining, it's love, it's all the things that the dogs share.
We can't keep up with all the requests, actually. So, and sometimes the requests are a little too far away. So sometimes it's really hard to keep up with the requests. Or someone wanted us to attend a facility in McKinney recently, and we did find someone to go there.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of requests that we just don't have the numbers to fulfill all of those.
How many chapters do you have in the Dallas-Fort Worth area?
we are the only chapter.
Oh, you are?
There are other volunteers that are not yet identified a leader in order to form a chapter. We could very easily sustain a north central, east, southeast, south central, and southwest. We're sort of northwest
Yeah.
to north of 121 predominantly, and west of the tollway.
We do have people that live in Denton County that go over to Dallas County, that go over to some of the schools there. We have an individual that goes to the airport.
Oh, that's cool.
And so...
And we've done specialty events, like there was an organization that provides support to families who have lost loved ones due to violence. And they have a few-day retreat, and they asked us to be at a facility at the location where they were having their retreat. And usually they had been doing that in South Texas and had a different one of our chapters supporting them. But this couple of years ago, they did it up north, and it was just south of the Oklahoma border. And 3 of us took our dogs up there for a particular event where they write a letter to the offender and speak their mind, and have to, through that, relive the trauma of it in order to then burn that. And during that process, they wanted to make sure they had therapy dogs.
That's really sweet.
There.
Wow. With your ambassadors, are most people retired that are ambassadors, or are they all ages?
All ages. Clearly, the people who are retired have greater flexibility, but we have some where we have some in childhood education. We have one that's in the process of becoming a member of the chapter who works at UNT. But some people have had their dogs in the therapy role at the school where they work, and therefore the events that they support outside of the work that they do at the school is on a weekend or in some cases after school. But the dog has been through its role providing service all day, and you want to give the dog a break because the dogs feed on the emotions of the people that it interacts with. And so the organization likes to make sure that we support the care of our dogs as well, so that we only do maybe 2 hours at a go. That varies a little bit during the crisis response. We do want to take some breaks in that period, but you don't want to overwhelm the dog.
Yeah. We have one ambassador that purchased a second dog. She was going out so often that sometimes she would have a morning appointment and an afternoon appointment, and it was wearing her dog out.
Yeah.
So she has 2 dogs. So she kind of has the AM dog and the PM dog.
Yeah. Dogs need their naps too.
Right.
Well, if someone wants to get involved, I know there's other ways to support us on your website. Probably like donations and other ways that they can support this cause. So can you tell us the website and ways that they could be part of it?
The website is canineforchrist.org, and that's the national or international website. And there is a place there where you can donate, and it would go to the national organization to help fund events.
We don't do local chapter donations.
So just on the national level.
We redirect everyone to the national level.
Okay. And the main thing is if you are interested and have a dog that you would like to have trained, you could contact us and maybe message us on our Facebook page and let us know you're interested. And we just need other dogs that want to be involved and can go out and visit. And I have several requests right now that I haven't been able to fulfill because they're a little bit farther south.
The way that we identify places to visit is kind of threefold. First, there are people who make requests for visits through the national website. And the administrator then will, if it's a location in our area, the director will forward that request over to me because I've had the more interactive role with them. They tend to forward it to me rather than Debbie. And I will let them know, yes, is that within our area or is it it's not something that we're going to be able to support? And then I make a follow-up call to the requesting organization. We have had referrals to second facilities and programs based upon our interaction with a current one. And then within our chapter, we circulate a monthly calendar, and that lists all of our upcoming visits for that month and who the liaison point is for each of those visits. Okay. And so as new people join our chapter, if they want to join in on a particular facility near them, they can contact the other chapter member who's the liaison for that. And
they can go on, like if they're only available once a month or once every couple of months, it's just based on their schedule, but they can see what's going on and say, hey, I want to go to this one.
Yeah, and they're volunteers, and we have some people that just go out once or twice a month. And then we have some people that they are so passionate about this ministry that they go out almost every day.
Wow.
So it really is up to the individual.
We also keep in mind the temperament of the dog. So some dogs are not good with kids. And so we don't try to shoehorn them into a kid event. Every time that we have something, like we have one of the schools in Flower Mound, every year during a specific week in September, they have us come out for 3 days in a row to cover all their classes.
Well, I love what y'all are doing. I love this organization, and to be able to share it with our listeners is wonderful. So I hope that this will inspire others, or just maybe they didn't know about this, which I didn't until I met you ladies in October. Hopefully you'll have more people who want to be ambassadors or just want to support in any way they can. So thank you both for coming on the podcast.
Well,
Our pleasure.
Thank you for inviting us.
Sure. And in our show notes, we will have your website so people can find it, and your Facebook page. Now, your Facebook page is specific just for this area, right?
We have a Facebook page that is specific for our chapter.
Okay.
But then there's also a Facebook page for the national/international organization.
Okay.
And then the national organization also has a website.
Great. Well, we will add all of that into the show notes and share that with everyone. So
Great.
thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. And like I said, we'll have all the information. You can find all of our podcast episodes on my website, which is loriwilliams-seniorservices.com. And please share this episode with your friends and neighbors and families. And thank you as always for listening. We'll talk to you next week.